topic for today is all about measures of relative position. There are three common measures of relative position, and these are the quartiles, deciles, and percentiles, where quartiles divided data into 4 equal parts, deciles divided data into 10 equal parts, and lastly, percentiles, which is divided data into 100 equal parts. Quartiles group data. These are the value that divide a set of scores or observations into 4 equal parts. That is the formula we need to use to find the value of quartiles in group data. Q is equal to L sub QC plus C, and then open and close parenthesis Q, and open and close parenthesis again, N over 4 minus F sub B all over F sub QC, where L sub QC is lower than or lower class boundary of the quartile class, C is the class size, FB is the less than cumulative frequency before the quartile class, N is the total number of observations, and F sub QC is the frequency of the quartile class. Now, let's have an example. So, the data represents the scores of 55 students in a long quiz. Now, we need to find the value of first quartile. The frequency distribution table is already given, so we need to find or to compute the first quartile. The first thing we need to do is to find the quartile class, and the formula is N over 4, which is 55 over 4, is equal to 13.75. And we will find under the less than cumulative frequency the smallest that is equal to 13.75 or greater than 13.75. In this case, it is 13. And we know that the quartile class is this. The next step is to substitute the needed information in using the quartile group data formula. Q is equal to 8.5, which is the lower class boundary of the quartile class, plus 5, which is the class size, open and close parenthesis 1 is the value of quartile that we need to find, open and close parenthesis again, 55 over 4 minus 5, which is the cumulative frequency before the quartile class, all over 8, which is the frequency of the quartile class. After substituting, you need to simplify it. So, in simplifying your answer, one thing you need to do is to follow the PEMDAS rule. And after you substituting and simplifying, your answer that you've got is 13.95. The next step that we need to do is to check if this value is somewhere in between the class interval of the quartile class. We all know that your answer or the answer is correct. For the last part, the interpretation of the value that we've got is we all know that the value we divided or the value of the quartile class are equally divided into 4 equal parts. And then each part has 25%. And since the value we are finding is the quartile class, it just means that 25% of the students get scores equal or below 13, or 75% of the students got scores equal or above 13.
Deciles for group data. These are the values that divide a set of scores or observations into 10 equal parts. That is the formula we need to use to find the value of deciles in group data. D is equal to L sub DC plus C, and then open and close parenthesis D, and then open and close parenthesis again, n over 10 minus fb or f sub b all over f sub dc, where LDC or L sub DC is lower class boundary of the decile class, C is the class size, FB or F sub B is the less than CF or cumulative frequency before the decile class, N is the total number of the observation, FDC or F sub DC is the frequency of the decile. Now, let's have an example. So, the data represents the scores of 55 students in a long quiz. Now, we need to find the value of D3. The frequency distribution table is already given, so we need to do is compute the decile tree. The first thing we need to do is to find the decile tree, and the formula is D is n over 10, which is 3 times 55 over 10 is equal to 16.5, and they will find the smallest value under the less than cumulative frequency that is equal or greater than 16.5. And in this case, it is 24. And we know that this is will our decile class is this. The next step is to substitute the needed value in using the D3 formula. For us to get the correct answers, we need to always follow the PEMDAS rule. So D is equal to 13.5, which is the lower class boundary of decile class, plus 5, which is the class size, open and close parentheses, 3 is the numerator, is the value of decile that we need to find. And then open and close parentheses, 55 over 10 minus 13, which is the cumulative frequency before the quartile class, all over 11, which is the frequency of the quartile class. After substituting, you need to simplify, and after you substitute and simplify, the value that you've got is 15.0909090909, or approximately 15.1. The next step that we need to do is to check if this value is somewhere in between your decile class. So, the class interval of decile class is 14 to 18. Since the 15.1 in between the class interval of the decile class, we all know that the answer is correct. For the last part, the interpretation of the value that we've got, decile tree is equal to 30% that are equally divided into 10 parts. And with 30%, each and we are finding is the decile, this just means that 30% of the students got score equal or below 24, or 75% of the students got score equal or above 24.
So lastly is the percentiles of group data. Percentiles is the value that divide the set of scores or observation into 100 equal parts. This is the formula we needed to use to find the value of percentile in group data. P is equal to L sub PC plus C, open and close parenthesis P, and open and close parenthesis again, N over 100 minus FB or F sub B all over F sub PC, where LPC or L sub PC is the lower class boundary of the percentiles class, C is the class size, FB or F sub B is less than cumulative frequency before the percentiles class, and N is the total number of observation, and F sub BC is the frequency of the percentiles class. And of course, to better understand percentiles, let's have an example. So the data represent the scores of 55 students in a long quiz. Now, we need to find the value of P sub 22. Since the frequency distribution table is already given, we need to do is to compute the P sub 22. And the first thing we need to do is to find the P sub 22, and the formula is P is n over 100, which is 22 times 55 over 100 is equal to 12.1. And we will find the smallest value under the less than cumulative frequency that is equal or greater than 12.1. And in this case, it is 13. And we all know that this will be our percentiles class, this one. The next step is to substitute the needed value in using the P sub 22 formula. And for us to get the correct answers, we need to always follow the PEMDAS rule. So, P is equal to 8.5, which is the lower class boundary of the percentiles class, plus 5, which is the class size, open and close parenthesis 22,
which is the value of percentiles that we needed to find. And then open and close parentheses, 55 over 100 minus 5, which is the cumulative frequency before the percentiles class. And all over 8, which is the frequency of the percentiles class. And of course, after substituting, you need to simplify. And after substituting and simplifying the value, you will get this 12.9375 or approximately 12.94. And the next step that we need to do is to check if this value is somewhere in between your percentiles class. So, the class interval of percentiles class is 9 to 13. Seems that 12.94 is in between the class interval of the percentiles class. So, in this case, we all know that the answer is correct. And for the last part is the interpretation of the value that we've got. Percentiles is equal to 22% that are equally divided into 100 parts and with 1% each, and we are finding is the percentiles. This just means that 22% of the student scores that got equal or below 12.94 or 78% of student scores got equal or above 12.94. So that's all. I hope you've learned something from us. Thank you!